Okay, so we have should the House of Representatives be expanded? Okay, so let's start off with the history, right? The House of Representatives was established by the Constitution in 1789. It was created as the lower house of Congress, with the Senate as the upper house. The original number of representatives was dead set at 65, with each state having a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 12. The number of representatives grew with each state added to the Union. In 1911, Congress had passed a law setting the number of representatives at 435, with each state guaranteed at least one seat. The number has remained constant, despite a huge population growth and shift in representation, leading to disproportionate representation in some states. So let's compare them to our other legislative branches and countries. Okay, we have the largest out of any country, okay, our largest lower chamber in the world. The size of the representatives can be seen as both a strength and a weakness. On one hand, our large number of representatives allow for a diverse range of views and representation. On the other hand, it can lead to inefficiency and difficulty in passing legislation. Many countries have a unicameral system where there is only one legislative body. This can lead to a more streamlined and efficient decision-making process. Other countries, such as the UK and Canada, have a smaller number of representatives, leading to more intimate and collaborative debates and discussions. Arguments for expansion, right? So we'll start off with representation. Expanding the House will provide more representation for a diverse population. We have increased diversity. With the larger House, there would be more room for diverse viewpoints and perspectives. Fairness. Smaller states are currently overrepresented in the House. A larger House would correct such imbalances. We have more efficiency. A larger House would allow for more specialized and focused committees, leading to more efficient decision making. The reduction of gerrymandering. Expanding the House would lead to more compact and less gerrymandered districts. Now we have arguments against our expansion here. Decreased efficiency. Expanding the House would result in large number of representatives, which could lead to longer debates and delays in passing legislation. We have the cost. Each additional representative would require a salary, benefits, and resources, ultimately increasing the cost to taxpayers. Greater political polarization. With the larger number of representatives, there is a higher likelihood of diverse political views, potentially leading to increased gridlock and partisan divides. Diminished representation. We have expanding the House would dilute the representation of smaller states and rural areas, as larger states would have an even greater number of representatives. Constitutional limitations. Now, like I said previously, the Constitution currently sets the number of representatives at 435, and amending this would require a lengthy and complex process, potentially causing political tension and public discontent. Now we have our pros and cons. So our pros, we have increased representation for marginalized and unrepresented groups, better reflection of the population's diverse views and needs, more voices and perspectives in the decision-making process, potentially reduced gridlock and stalemate in legislation, greater accountability for representatives to their constituents. For our cons, we have higher costs for taxpayers in terms of salaries, benefits, and resources for our additional representatives, potential for gerrymandering to manipulate election results, difficulty in coordinating and reaching consensus among a larger number of reps, risk of lacking specialized expertise and knowledge in certain policy areas, and the possibility of disproportionately representing certain states or regions, leading to unequal representation. Now, our current issues with moving forward, like I said previously, we're constitutionally limited to 435 members. There's fear of loss of efficiency and increased bureaucracy with expansion. We have disagreement on how many additional seats to add, difficulty in redistributing districts and redrawing maps, concerns about equal representation across states, potential for unequal representation within states, cost of expanding Congress, like I said previously, salary, staff, office space, resources. Political gridlock and partisanship may worsen with more representatives, and potential for larger, more diverse representation and perspectives. Difficulty in passing amendments for expansion due to existing political climates. Right now, previous case studies, we had a few here. We have one in 1929, right, which was a bill that was introduced to expand the House to 483 members, right? But it was met with strong opposition from members who feared it would dilute their power and make the legislative process more complicated. In 1976, we had our president, Jimmy Carter, endorse a proposal to expand the House to 525 members, but it did not gain traction in Congress. And we have some in more recent years, such as in 2019, a bill was introduced to increase the House to 757 members, with the goal of better representation for smaller states and districts. But it faced opposition for those who argued it would increase government spending. Now, in all these attempts, the proposed expansion was met with pushback and failed to gain enough support to pass. There have also been discussions of alternative measures, such as reapportionment and redistricting, to address the issue of representation in our House. The proponents of expanding the House would argue that it would be better to reflect the growing population and increase diversity, while opponents argue it would make the legislative process more complicated and costly. Now, our alternative solutions to increasing representation. We can implement term limits for representatives. We can redraw district lines to ensure fair representation. We can implement ranked choice voting, creating a quota for unrepresented groups. We can expand the use of mail-in and early voting, implement public financing of elections, encouraging third-party or independent candidates, implementing proportional representation, increasing public awareness and participation in the voting process, implementing a rotating system of representation within districts, and consideration of alternative voting systems such as approval voting or single transferable votes. Now, impact with redistricting and gerrymandering, okay? So implementing these term limits for representatives, redrawing district lines to ensure fair representation, implementing ranked choice voting, creating a quota system for underrepresented groups, expanding the use of mail-in and early voting, implementing public financing of elections, encouraging third-party or independent candidates, implementing proportional representation, increasing public awareness and participation in the voting process, implementing a rotating system of representation within districts, and consideration of alternative voting systems such as approval voting or single transferable votes. Now, our analysis of the cost and logistics of expanding, right? So when we have increased costs for additional salary, office space, and staff for new representatives, potential redistricting and redistributing of political power, a need for larger chambers and additional accommodations in the Capitol building, changes to election process to accommodate more representatives on ballots, potential delays in legislative processes due to a large number of representatives, and adjustments to committee structures and procedures to accommodate more members. Public opinion. Now, some people do believe the House of Representatives should be expanded to be more representative of the population. Expansion could lead to greater diversity and inclusion in government. Others argue that the expansion could lead to a diluted representation and decreased efficiency. Cost and logistics should also be taken into consideration before making such a big decision. The decision ultimately depends on what is best for the country and its citizens. Now, the role of technology and communication to reduce the need for a larger House. Efficient communication technology allows representatives to stay in touch with their constituents without the need for physical office space. Virtual meetings and video conferencing tools eliminate the need for representatives to be physically present in the House, reducing the need for more seating. Online platforms and social media can be used for campaigning and reaching a larger audience, reducing the need for physical rallies and events. Digital documentation and online databases make it easier for representatives to access information and work remotely. Technology can also streamline administrative processes, reducing the need for a larger support staff, and office space. Online voting systems can also be implemented to streamline and speed up decision-making processes, reducing the need for longer legislative sessions and a larger physical space to accommodate them. Now, with this last one I have just said, previous attempts have been made towards this where, hacking the voting system. So I'm not really lenient on this one as much. But as far as these go, these are pretty great valid ideas. Now, my recommendation is that we should conduct a thorough analysis of the population growth trends to determine the optimal number of representatives needed to accurately represent each and every one of our citizens. We can increase the House of Representatives gradually over time, then rather make it just a sudden jump to allow for a smoother transition. Now, we must consider the potential costs and logistics of expanding the House of Representatives, such as building larger chambers and hiring more staff. Ensure that the expansion does not disproportionately benefit one political party and instead aims to create a more balanced representation. And for my conclusion, while there are valid arguments on both sides regarding our House should be expanded, I made a typo here, but while expanding the House may provide more accurate representation and potentially increase diversity, it also presents potential challenges and costs. Ultimately, any decision should be carefully considered and based on thorough evidence and analysis rather than partisan motives. Thank you. That is all I have for my presentation.